Hi,
Perfect.
we're live.
Hello, everyone. Yeah, we're live. Welcome to the second workshop of the Cross-Chain Summer Hackathon by Chainflip, Thorchain, and Maya. I'm super excited to kick it off with Dan and Andrew today. Just for some more context, we started the hackathon on 22nd June. We'll be wrapping it up on 21st July. So all the devs who are building in this hackathon, all the teams, you still have time to, um, sort of digest all the content via the workshops, via the docs, via everything that's being shared during the course of the hackathon. But yeah, nonetheless, without taking a lot of time, like I said, happy to kick it off with Dan and Andrew today. The topic would be exploring the Chainflip SDK. And if you have any questions throughout the workshop, feel free to put it in the comments and we'll take it up towards the end of the workshop. But yeah, Dan and Andrew, I'll pass it on to you now.
Thank you, Mishka. Right, exploring the Chainflip SDK. The goal of this is to help you understand the what and why of how to integrate as a broker with the Chainflip protocol. I'll get to what a broker is in just a second. Very briefly about the Chainflip protocol. Chainflip protocol is for cross-chain swaps. How do you do a cross-chain swap? Well, it's kind of complicated, and of course we don't want to. We want to hide all of that complicatedness from the end user, and ideally we want to hide as much of that as well from our integrators. So if you want to build on top of Chainflip, we want to try and make that as simple as possible. Our solution to this is to sort of break up the roles on the Chainflip protocol, sort of into kind of clearly defined categories. So we have validators. If you're watching this, I would assume that you've heard of validators before. It's very common in all networks. They are responsible for maintaining the blockchain and for making sure that everybody follows the rules, including the LPs, the liquidity providers, and the brokers. Liquidity providers are sort of members who are trading, but on their own behalf, right? So they're making the markets, they're providing the liquidity for the end users, the retail users that want to swap. If you want to swap, you need somebody to swap against. If you have to wait for somebody else to swap in the other direction, then that's not ideal because, well, it would take a long time to find someone. And that's where LPs come in. They have liquidity at the ready, and they will always offer prices, or at least that's the theory. They will always offer prices for you to swap against. So the third category of protocol member or protocol account is the broker. Now, what is a broker? Well, I just said that LPs trade on their own behalf, so they trade their own account. They have liquidity at the ready. Brokers, they have similar privileges to LPs. They can initiate trades, or they can, well, strictly speaking, not initiate trades. We'll come to that in a second. But brokers are facilitating trades. This is a little bit like in the legacy financial system, right? They facilitate trades for third parties. In this case, a swapper. So if a swapper wants to, if someone wants to swap Bitcoin to ETH, cross-chain swap, they would ask the broker to open what we call a swap channel on the Chainflip protocol. This channel contains all of the information that the Chainflip protocol needs in order to process the swap. So Bitcoin to ETH, and the destination address, and some sort of metadata to do with fees, and soon to come, possibly limit prices and things like this. In exchange, the swapper receives a deposit address. They send their Bitcoin to the deposit address, and the rest just kind of works like magic. That's the theory anyway. So yeah, what are the responsibilities of a broker? They deal with the technical details because we want to make this as simple as possible for the end user. So the end user should just say, I want to swap Bitcoin to ETH. They receive an address, they send Bitcoin to that address, they receive ETH on their desired output address, right? It's very simple, but in the background, it really isn't. It's taken us a long time to get this far. And so, yeah, despite the fact that well, the topic of this is the SDK. So we have been working hard at making it as simple as possible to integrate. Despite all of this, of course, it does require technical knowledge. You do need to maintain backend infrastructure. You do need to deal with some of the ugliness of blockchains and cryptography, and brokers are responsible for dealing with this and abstracting it away as much as possible in UX, a nice user interface that makes it beautiful and simple and attractive. It makes you want to swap. So in that sense, yes, it's communication as well, attracting users, and maybe slightly underappreciated, it also serves the purpose of spam prevention. So how do other blockchains deal with spam prevention? Well, transaction fees. Paying transaction fees requires you to own the native currency, requires you to connect a wallet, requires you to author transactions, requires you to take on the risk of all of this. And yes, so since we want users to be able to interact with Chainflip without going through any of these steps, this is the broker's responsibility. So dealing with spam prevention has to go through some other route. So more traditional methods such as the dirty word KYC. They could provide accounts to users. They can do IP scanning, etc. Because ultimately the brokers taking on responsibility, like in a way they vouch for their users by paying the transaction fee on behalf of the user to open the swap channels and to allow the protocol to process swaps. So that's a lot of responsibilities. Why would anyone do this, right? There are benefits. As a broker, you can take a commission, right? This is how brokers in a normal financial system, in the legacy financial system, operate, right? If you want to trade on the New York Stock Exchange, you can't just do it, right? You're not a member of the New York Stock Exchange. You would go to a broker who is a member. You would ask them to trade on your behalf. And this is kind of the idea of behind brokers on Chainflip, and hence the naming as well. It's very similar to how things work in legacy finance. And the reward for this, of course, is a commission. So you as a broker can, so to speak, skim off a small percentage of every swap, and you get that added to your balance. And the more volume that you attract through your beautiful cross-chain swapping interface, the more money you make. Another benefit, of course, is cross-chain assets, right? And this is specific to Chainflip, right? We're one of the very few protocols who can process cross-chain swaps natively, right? There are no wrapped assets involved. If you already have an existing product, you can very simply and easily add cross-chain assets. You integrate one protocol and you get access to multiple and ever-increasing number of cross-chain pathways. Right now we support Bitcoin, Ethereum, Arbitrum, and of course Polkadot. How could I forget? And there will be more to come, of course. We're working on it. But the key thing here is, yes, one integration, multiple chains, and then we'll be adding more. And speaking of integration, of course, as I mentioned, we want to make this all as easy as possible. To that end, we have developed an SDK, and Andrew's going to take you through that in a little bit more detail. So I'll pass off to Andrew at this point, and he will talk a little bit about the SDK. Thank you.
Thank you for the introduction, Dan.
You're welcome.
All right. Let's see. New software. Is it going to just work? I'm excited to find out. Does it just work? It does. Oh wait, I think you have to unshare. Okay, there it is. Delay. All right. So welcome to the Chainflip docs, your first port of call when trying to integrate the Chainflip protocol into perhaps your existing product or starting something new. So let's go to the swapping and then the JavaScript SDK. So as you can tell by the name, the JavaScript SDK is written in JavaScript. It's published to NPM. It's actually written in TypeScript, so it has full type support as well. With the SDK, you can simply install it from NPM. You can then get the assets for the given network that you're connected to. We have two networks you can use. You can use our testnet Perseverance, or you can use our public network. Our main networks are. So you can get the assets that are available for that network. You can get a quote for a swap between two of those assets. And then you can also build off of what Dan was saying with the brokers, request a deposit channel to be opened so that way swaps can be processed. To get you going quickly, we provide broker infrastructure so you don't have to go through the effort of setting up all the backend stuff before you can even work with the SDK. So you can just install the SDK, try it out with our infrastructure, and see how it works. What that means, though, is that you can't set any commission for swaps that go through channels because you're using our broker, and our broker doesn't take any commission. So I thought it would be easiest to just sort of, instead of walking through the docs, now you know where the docs are, you can find them, to perhaps instead do some live coding. So we'll see how that goes. Need to share a different screen now. Stop screen, present. Okay, so here we have VS Code open with no prior setup. So we just have to first initialize our JavaScript app and then add the Chainflip SDK. And we'll add some other stuff too, so we don't have to transpile our TypeScript. So simply as importing the swap SDK from the npm package we just installed, then we can instantiate the SDK. And for the purposes of this demonstration, and probably for the purposes of your initial testing with it, you'll want to connect to the Perseverance network, which is our testnet. And then from here, we can disable Copilot because he's going to be very unhelpful with me throughout this entire presentation, I have a feeling. All right, so we want to see, for example, which assets are available to swap on the Perseverance network. So we do await SDK get assets. And if we run that, okay, we can see we have an array of assets that come back. These are fetched from an RPC server. And then when you make your first request with the SDK to one of our RPC servers, we cache it for the lifetime of the SDK. So if you plan on using the SDK in the future, it's good to know that occasionally. For example, during network upgrades, when we add new assets, you'll have to restart your services that use the SDK, but that should probably happen anyway because you'll have to upgrade. Anyway, so we can see we have, for example, Ethereum and Chainflip. All right, I have some Ethereum. Our test network uses Sepolia. So say I want to swap some Sepolia ETH for some Sepolia Flip. how do we do that? Well, we can take the SDK and we can get a quote. To get a quote, you just call the get quote method. You have to provide the source asset, which will be ETH, but here it's going to be, obviously, since the network is Perseverance, it's going to be Sepolia ETH, the source chain Ethereum, again, Sepolia, dest asset, flip, dest chain, Ethereum. As Dan said, obviously we have native cross-chain swaps, and it seems silly not to call that out here because I'm just going to do a swap from Ethereum to flip, ETH to flip, which are both on Sepolia. That's just for speed reasons. Swapping to or from Bitcoin is going to add a lot of time, and I'm doing a live coding presentation, so I just want to use the path of least resistance. Then the last thing that we need to provide is an amount that is going to be swapped. Now, the amount that's going to be swapped is always going to be in the base unit of the source asset. So for Ethereum, it's going to be Wei. So say we want to swap 1 ETH, which is going to be 1 times 10 to the 18 Wei. And then we'll see what kind of quote we can get for that. And I'll ignore that so that way we don't get another huge blob here of assets. All right, so we see we've got what we provided gets sent back to you for convenience. And we have got the quote, intermediate amount. Every swap on Chainflip goes through USDC. So this intermediate amount is how much USDC you will have in the middle. So we're going to swap under the hood from ETH to USDC, and then that USDC gets swapped from to flip. And then this is the amount of flip you'll get out. Flip has, like Ethereum, 18 decimal places. So if we divide this by 10 to the power of 18, we'll get the amount of flip that you're going to get out. We can see the included fees. Let me see if I can stringify this to make it a little bit friendlier. Hope there's no big ints in there. Okay. So we can see the pool info. Again, so this shows the pools you're going to touch. It goes from ETH to USDC. There's going to be an LP fee there, as Dan explained the liquidity provisioning before, and it goes from USDC to flip. And again, there's going to be another LP fee there. We have an estimated time that this is going to take in seconds, and the different fees that will be administered along the way. So now that we've got our quote, we'll see that we're happy with this amount of ETH. I'm sure how much flipped actually, but it looks like a big number to me. So we'll say, all right, I want to now open a deposit channel. How do we open a deposit channel? Well, if we take these arguments, we can use them also to open a deposit channel. Request deposit address. I probably need some extra information here. Because how can you request a deposit address if you don't tell where you want your assets to get swapped to? So let's grab an Ethereum address where we can expect to receive our tokens. Destination address. And that's it. That's the only further argument that needs to be provided in order to open a deposit address. Now, there are some more advanced configuration options, such as you can take a broker commission if you're running your own broker. If you provide this broker commission and you're using our broker, it's a no-op and it won't do anything. Our new boost feature, you can specify what is the max amount you are willing to pay to have your deposit boosted. Sure, There's some documentation about what exactly Boost is. I just want to focus on how to use the SDK. And then also interesting new functionality from 1.4, our latest release, are affiliate brokers, which reduces the infrastructure requirements for running a broker. So instead of you having to run the backend infrastructure yourself, you can simply create the account on the state chain, and a person who does run the actual broker can use this argument to open channels on your behalf and then take fees. You can take a fee, the person who opens the channel takes a fee, so it's a win-win, and the user gets to swap, so it's a win-win-win. I think there was already a talk on the broker as a service, so I don't want to go too deep into that, but perhaps you missed that. That's something you can go check out to see more information about this. So yeah, I think that's all of the different arguments that you can provide here. Again, none of them will do anything unless you're running your own broker, so it's important to, if you've gone through the test phase, you see, all right, I like what I see, it's important to set up your own broker so that way you can benefit from using the SDK. But for the purpose of the demonstration, we're using the Chainflip broker. So now we just have to request a deposit channel. So let's go ahead and request that deposit channel and see what comes back. This will take a little bit because in order to open a deposit channel, oh no, you have to submit a transaction to the state chain. The broker needs to submit a transaction to the state chain, and that transaction needs to be included in a block, and the state chain has a block time of approximately 6 seconds. But anyway, here is our response. So this is the channel response. It has the information that you provided again for ease of reading. It has the destination address. Importantly, it also has the deposit channel ID. This is how you can look up the status of a swap, or swaps going to this deposit channel. And it also has the deposit address. So in order to even use this deposit channel, you have to send funds to this deposit address. It's important that you only send the funds from this type specified here. Anything else will be lost. If you send Arbitrum ETH, it will be lost. So make sure to always send exactly the asset you specified to the given address. And the deposit channel isn't open forever, because if we just open deposit channels forever, then we would have to forever monitor them. So they do have an expiration time, and you can see that we have an estimated expiration time. But we also have a block on Ethereum when that deposit channel will expire. So once this block is reached on Ethereum, this channel is no longer valid. Any funds sent to it will be lost. So it's important to timely swap when you open a deposit channel. Cool. So now we have this deposit channel. I'll save the ID here because we're going to want to look this up later. And I will remove this stuff because we don't want to be opening channels and spamming. Please don't spam. There's our channel ID, and we can use the channel ID. I'll save the deposit address too, but it should be able to look at that when we request status. So now we have a channel. We want to see what's the status of any swap going through that channel. How do we do that? Well, good news for you. There is an SDK method for that. You provide the channel ID. You can also provide the swap ID, which is different than a channel ID. And then you simply call this. And then you wait. So you can see the current state is awaiting deposit. It means that no deposits have yet been detected to this deposit channel, which makes sense because unless someone watching this presentation has initiated a deposit, I haven't done it yet. So it's just waiting to receive some funds to be swapped. There's a lot of information that we provide, and then as a swap comes in, you'll get even more information. This is all listed in detail in our SDK documentation. So I would recommend going there to get an in-depth view of the information that we return. But again, yeah, there's the destination address and the deposit address, important. So I will now initiate a swap to this channel. I'm going to send Sepolia ETH as requested, and I should be able to get Sepolia flip back. So if I go over to, I don't think you'll see this because I'm going to a different window. If I go to MetaMask and then I send not mainnet ETH, that would be bad. I want to send Sepolia ETH. I want to send Sepolia ETH. You do not have to send the exact amount that you specified when you open the deposit channel. What you send will be swapped, but obviously the rate will differ. And the longer you wait to send this ETH, the more the rate has the ability to change. So I've just sent 0.1 Sepolia ETH to this deposit channel. The transaction is currently pending. When that goes through, we'll be able to call the status method again to get the latest status. I guess this is the danger. All right, it says confirmed. So let's go ahead and start checking to see if we have a new status. Awaiting deposit. Awaiting deposit. Super duper. I guess in the meantime, we can take this channel ID and then we can show you what else you can do with it. If we go, for example, to the Chainflip Block Explorer, do it one more time before I go away. Okay, so it says awaiting deposit. So let me find our little presentation here. Stop screen, present, share screen, share screen. So we can go to scan.perseverance.chainflip.io. This is our testnet block explorer. You can switch between them here. If we go to the swaps, we can see the open deposit channels down here. So if we look, we'll see both of the deposit channels that I opened two because the first one had the error when I was trying to display it. But if you look, here is that ID that we got back for that request. And now we see a swap has gone through. So that'll be fun when we go back. We can take a look to see. But if we go to here, we can also see how exactly this all works. We just monitor different events in the state chain. You can go and look at these different events, like the deposit channel being opened has an event, when we see the funds be deposited, when we get, when we see the swap go through our AMM, and then when we start to send the funds. But now that we know we have a swap, we can go and check out what that status looks like now. Oh, look at that. Some more information. All right, we're in the broadcast requested phase, which means that the swap has gone through the AMM. It has ended up in the lap of a validator who has been requested to send these funds from our vault. There is, again, if you go to the documentation, a listing of all the different states it can have and the different information that's available in those states. So some of those events that we just looked at in the block explorer, you can see them here. When these things happen, we've got Unix timestamps of when those things happen, so you can get an idea of when they happened. You can see how much was paid in fees for this swap, and we still get some information about the deposit channel as well. we check it out now, still broadcast requested. But anyway, that I think is the overview of how you can use the SDK to get swapping on Chainflip. We tried to make it as simple as possible. Unfortunately, this glosses over the mess of running your own broker. We do have broker providers out there, so you don't necessarily have to run your own. Again, go check out the broker as a service presentation if you want more information about that. There are also some convenience exports from here, so if you don't want to be using string literals, we also provide other exports too. So you can do assets. Is it assets? Ooh, .eth, yeah. For example, this is in the documentation too. So this has just been a 10,000 foot view of using the Chainflip SDK. I don't know if I have too much else to say at this point, so I will stop sharing and check if there's any questions. Yeah, my MetaMask wasn't shared. It's just so much annoyance to switch back and forth between the two sharing, so I didn't want to be doing that too much. Thank you for pointing that out. But if you have any questions, feel free to ask. LFG.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Andrew and Dan. Seems like there's no question for now. But yeah, I would encourage everyone building in this hackathon to go and join the Builder Discord and the other channels. And all of these details are present on the detail page of the hackathon, a detailed subpage of the hackathon page on DoraHacks itself. There's also a bunch of docs and tooling guides for you to go and look at before you start building out, and ask any questions that you have on the group itself. And yeah, I think that was it for today's workshop. We have 3 more workshops until we wrap up the entire course of the hackathon. And then on 30th July, we have the closing ceremony / result announcement. But yeah, that's a little timeline. And yeah, again, I'd love to thank Andrew and Dan for giving their time and taking us through the Chainflip SDK. Thanks a lot, guys.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. And bye-bye.
Bye-bye.